Welcome. In this video, let me introduce you to Premiere Pro, and even if you have experience with Premiere, I still recommend to watch this video because I'm going to introduce you in a way where I can pretty much guarantee that you will learn something new. So let's open Premiere, then let's go into the top left corner and click on New Project. Now, first you need to choose a location and name your project. In Premiere, people usually use the default folder, which is Adobe Premiere Pro 25 or 26, whichever one you use. Just click there, and then for this one, I'm going to keep it untitled because later I'm going to show you how to professionally organize your files to make sure things are just taken to the next level. Let's go ahead and create. Because I already have a project named like this, it's going to ask that I want to make sure that I replace it. And yes, I'm going to click on replace. What you have in front of your screen might be slightly different from my screen. The reason for that is because it's a workspace and we can customize workspaces. Panel here, panel here, panel here, and panel here. The great thing is that we can move them around like so. Like we can make it smaller, bigger. We can move something, for example, to the bottom. If I take this program window, click, drag to, let's say, the bottom. It's going to be here at the bottom and we're not going to have it here at the top, but I'm going to put it back there. It's kind of intuitive. You can see the kind of purple bluish highlight, and whenever you just put something there, just going to put it there. Now, in the top right corner, we have different workspaces here. Depending on the type of work you're doing, you can switch between them and you can customize them. If I go into a vertical workspace, it looks a lot different. And the reason is because it's a lot more convenient, and I'll show you a couple of ways that you can do this in the future. But for now, just remember, you can really customize your workspace so that it's very productive and very convenient for you. Now, I'm going to go back into the editing workspace. At some point, you will close one of your program windows. So this is a program window or this is a program window. At some point, you will close one of those, and whenever you close it, just go into window and you can see everything that has a check mark. It means that it is somewhere on the screen here. So if you close it at some point, just go ahead and click on it and it will reappear. Like for example, if I want to click on libraries, libraries will appear here, and then I can go ahead and close it and then resize to my liking, whatever I want to do. Whenever you open Premiere, it's probably going to look something like this, where you will have something like the project files here at the left. Maybe it is going to be here at the top. Honestly, at this point, I don't even remember what the original looks like, but just remember, customization is the king. In the project panel, it doesn't matter where it's located for you. You need to click on new item and sequence. In Premiere Pro, a sequence is where you edit the video or where you create the video, where you work on the audio, where you create all sorts of effects. And before we create the sequence, we need to set some settings. We need to set resolution. We can set whatever resolution we want, 500 by 500 pixels, or we can make it full HD, just HD. We can do it 4K. It's up to us, whatever we want to do. Now, I do recommend setting 1080 pixels, so it's going to be 1920 by 1080 or 1080 by 1920. Either that or the other way. The reason is because it's going to keep the maximum quality by taking the lowest power of your computer. Because if we do 4K, that's going to be 4 times the full HD. So it's going to take 4 times as much power from your computer, and most of the people, they will not notice kind of the significant difference. Of course, if you have a super powerful machine, go ahead and use the 4K, but just to warn you, that's going to take a lot, like significantly a lot more power for your computer, and then editing videos can just become a burden and you don't want to get to that point. So we have sequence settings, and in terms of the frame rates, obviously lower frame rates will take less power for your computer because, for example, if we take a look at 30 and 60, for 30, it's twice as less than 60. So first of all, it's the power of your computer. Secondly, it's how smooth something is on the screen. For example, you're watching this video in 30 frames a second, which means that my movement, whenever I do any sort of movement, it's not super smooth. But if I was to put it to 60, it would be a lot smoother. We have some presets here that we can click. For example, we can click on this one, or we can go into settings and then set our own parameters. So these are sort of like the presets that save time. And if we go into the settings, we can set parameters, and we can set, for example, instead of 29, 97 to 30. I do enjoy having round numbers instead of having, something like this, because it's definitely a lot more confusing. And then when we put things into After Effects, it's also going to just make things a lot easier when things are precise. So 1920 by 1080. Now you will notice that there are all sorts of other frame rates, and I will say that if you are going for something specific, you will know. If you do not know, you're not going for something specific, then just stick to 30 frames a second. And if you're going for something super smooth, you can set it to 60, but for YouTube, what works really well is 30 frames per second. So 30, 1920 by 1080, and I'm going to press on OK. And we are going to have this horizontal video. Now, for example, I have this file and I can drag it into the project, just literally drag and drop it here. It's going to appear, and then I can drag and drop it into the sequence that we created, and you see that we have our video here. And then whenever I scrub through the timeline, it's going to change here as well. Now I can go ahead and click on select this video and click on delete, and it's going to delete it. Now I can also delete the sequence, and it's going to disappear from the screen, and I can literally drag and drop this video here and then drag it here. It's going to create sequence, and the sequence that it's going to create, it's going to have the same settings, the same parameters as the video. Let's take a look. This video, it is 1920 by 1080, we can see here, and then I can open the extra settings by pressing Command I on a Mac, and we'll see that it is, cannot see the frame rates here, but let's take a look at what we have in Premiere Pro. So if I go into sequence settings, it's going to be 30 frames a second. Perfect. But if we added the video that was, for example, like 20 frames a second or 60, it would create a sequence with those frames per second. Now let me delete this, and I'm going to go back into the editing workspace because this is definitely a lot more convenient for me. A super important aspect, and I'll tell you this right away, is learning shortcuts. Shortcuts, basically like by pressing a certain key, you will create a certain action. And instead of you having to go into, like, for example, here and then searching for something, or, you know, clicking here, then here, and then it takes so much movement. You can just press one button. It's going to make your life a lot easier. So for example, you know, instead of going into File, New, Project, I can just press Option Command N, it's going to create new project. Or I can press on Command N and it's going to create a new sequence. By the way, if you're on Windows, instead of Command, you just have to press Control. And I can go ahead and set 30, press OK. So instead of going there, or I use shortcuts. Somewhere in the screen, and probably roughly in the same space, you will have a list of these tools. These tools will help us to create the video, and you will learn these tools as we're going to use them. I mean, you can go ahead and preview. For example, if you hover over with the cursor, you will see what this tool does, the name of this tool, and then at the end you will also see shortcuts. So for example, this is going to be A, and I can just go ahead and click on A, and you will see it just selected it. So, and for the cursor, I just have to press V. It's called a selection tool. Now, when it comes to vertical videos, it's a very similar story. Let me drag another video here. You know, you can see that the sequence that we have is slightly different. So I can go ahead and delete the sequence, and I can go ahead and click on Command N to create a new sequence. And let's put 30, and here 1080 by 1920. Okay, it's going to become vertical, and I'm going to drag and drop a video here. It's saying that this clip doesn't match the sequence settings. Change the sequence to match the clip settings. We can certainly do that. The reason it's asking is because we have different frame rates. I said 30, but the video is actually 60 frame rates. So I can keep or I can change. And if I change and I go into sequence settings, which in my case is Command K, I'm going to click on it, you will see that it just turned to 60 frames per second. Perfect. Now let me zoom in a little bit by using this slider, like so. And actually, let's go into the vertical workspace. By vertical workspace, I mean, I just put this program monitor to the right, and so I just have it big on the screen. It's pretty convenient. Now, in Premiere, we have different tracks. At the top, we have video tracks. At the bottom, we have audio tracks. And you can see we have this thicker line that separates the two. So this is the top, this is the bottom, this is audio, this is video. We can create more tracks by just dragging something higher. And you can see that the track 4 just appeared. We can move between the tracks by using the slider here, or we can do it like so. Now let's go through the tools very quickly. For example, one of the most used ones is going to be the razor tool, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut something with it. By cutting, I'm then able to move it around, and it's going to be the same piece that stayed here. We'll see that this is the video. It starts with "and suddenly." Then I move it a little bit further. It starts with "and suddenly." Perfect. Another useful tool is A. By pressing A, we can select this tool. By clicking, I'm going to select everything that's going to be to the right of this tool. Or I can press on Shift and select just one track. Or I'm going to press Shift A and it's going to turn around, and by this I'm going to select everything that's to the left of the tool. The ripple edit tool is not used that often, so I wouldn't worry about it right now, but you can see that if you click and hold, you will have different options to choose. Now the slip tool is a little bit hard to explain, but basically we change the position of the video or the timing of the video, so we have this piece over here, and we can make sure that if I select this tool, I can make sure that we go to the very beginning of the video. So this is the very beginning, and this is the very beginning. It's a little bit hard to explain, but don't worry about it for now. A pen tool is going to be super useful because you can draw something on the screen, like you can draw a line, and then we can add a stroke instead of the fill. Make sure it is set to center or the outer or the inner, and you can see that we just created a line. Shape tool is also very useful because we can draw all sorts of shapes. We can set a fill, and we're going to have a shape on the screen. The hand tool I don't really use as much, but it just allows us to move around like so, or move around over here. And the last tool is the text tool that allows us to create text on the screen. Perfect. Now, if I select something, you will notice that we have the effects control, usually pops up, and we have the properties. The effects control and the properties are sort of similar, but in the effects control, you have these clocks that you can create keyframes with and basically animate something. As you can see in the properties, it's you can still create the keyframe, but it's not as convenient as doing here because you cannot move the keyframes around here. If I create something, you can see that we cannot see the keyframe. But the question is, what is a keyframe? Well, a keyframe is a point. For example, let me move our graphic here, and let's add a keyframe for the position. Move a little bit to the front and then move it to the right by using the position. So by doing that, you will see that over time, we're just basically telling that you go from here, in terms of the position, you go from here to here, and it moves from left to right. Now, we can do the same thing with scale. We can set a keyframe for scale, and then make sure we decrease in size. Boom, there you go. And we can do the same thing with rotation. Now you will see that we have, for example, like the vector motion, we have the video motion. All it is because this is a graphic, we have like graphic properties, and then we have properties of the whole layer. For example, if I select the video that's behind it, we don't have the graphic controls. We only have the motion controls of the layer. But if I select the graphic, you can see we have another graphic. And it means that, yes, we can create another keyframe here and move it a little bit to the front and then move it a little bit to the left. And it means that now everything just changed a little bit. And so we can do all sorts of stuff. We can crop it like from the bottom, from the top, things like that. And then whenever we're applying sorts of effects, like I can search for example, Gaussian blur, for example, something that will allow us to add blur. And I add blur, you can see that our square becomes, or the rectangle becomes blur. And I can actually just keyframe this blur as well. And it goes now from 0 to 150, like so. In the properties, it's sort of similar. If you click on a shape in the properties, it does give you a little bit more, but whenever we're talking about a video, it doesn't give much more than the effects control. So if we're talking graphics, we're talking text, then property is going to be super useful. Other than that, don't worry about it. Now you do have all sorts of different windows, and you do have different workspaces. I will say that you don't have to know everything about the software in order to create viral videos. You can do 80% of the work with 20% of the tools, and the last 20% of the tools take 80% of the work. So what you should focus on is creating videos and not learning every single tool, because it's not going to help you. So for that reason, let's jump into the next video and learn about After Effects. And after that, I will actually show you how to use all these tools in order to create the video. So if you have any questions, let me know. Other than that, let's jump into the next video.